Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Board Game Buys. So in this series I talk about all the games that we've added to our collection over the last 30 days or so. This episode covering April 2023. Now I only have 8 new games here, and only one of them was bought by myself personally. So the rest of them are purchases by my brother, so they might seem a little bit out of character for me, but let's get into it. But before I do get into the games, I want to give a shout out to KIENDA.co.uk, who are the show's sponsor, a great website where you can purchase new games at great prices and brilliant loyalty schemes as well, so be sure to check out their great website. But let's get cracking, and we're going to start with Lewis and Clark. So this is a game that I've heard mixed things about over the years. I believe it has some degree of resource management. I think it even might have some card play and a bit of deck building, but it's all held together through this race mechanism, I believe. So I'm not sure if it's a straight up, the first person to finish will win. But that's pretty much what I know about it, apart from looking fantastic. Great visuals here with the Vincent Dutrait artwork. Now, this is a game that I've wanted to get played for quite some time, but I've always held back a bit because I've heard that it does run a little bit long, especially being a race game. I believe the average time this one takes to play is around 2 hours, which is kind of right on the cusp of my comfort zone, really. But again, I'm quietly optimistic about this one. I think it could be good. Again, the only thing that is concerning me is that length, but we shall see if that game length is going to be worth it or not. Because if the gameplay is good, I don't mind a longer game. So hopefully we'll get this one played rather soon. Next up, I have Abandon All Artichokes. So this is a kind of a deck deconstruction game, I believe. Now, I have previously had another game in the collection called Chiseled, which is a game where you start with kind of a bunch of bad cards in your hand and you're playing through cards in your hand to shed those bad cards to get the best deck you can. This one, I believe it might even be a race to try and get rid of these artichoke cards. That's pretty much what I know about it. I believe it's fairly light. You can probably see that by the the visuals and the presentation of it. But again, who knows? It could be a better game than it looks. Next up, a game that I really didn't know much about. This is If Wishes Were Fishes. Now, from what I've read about this one is that you could be fooled by the presentation here. I think the almost child-friendly artwork could be a little bit misleading because I think there is some economic edge to this. It has some degree of area control, and some of the components here are quite quirky. Again, that's pretty much what I know about it. The actual kind of feedback and the reviews I've read on Board Game Geek are quite varied. So some people seem to think very highly of this, which is quite intriguing to me. So I think it actually could be one of those sleeper games, one that could be a bit underrated. And again, maybe another misleading game where you might look at it, think one thing, and it's going to be something completely different. So I think out of all these that I'm going to show you, this is actually right at the top of the games that I'm most interested in playing. So that is If Wishes Were Fishes. We have a couple more party games here. So this is What Came First. So this is like a wagering game as you are trying to bet on what one of two things have come first in terms of, being invented first or being, publicized first. So what came first, was it the bikini or the surfboard? I believe you're putting wagering chips down there and trying to get to a certain amount of points. The more you wager, obviously the more you stand to win, but also the more you stand to lose as well. Now, I tend to really like party games, despite me being a big Eurogame fan as well. I do love playing party games on more casual nights or with family, so this one could be a really good one to play with my parents. Staying on the same kind of line of that, we have Herd Mentality. So this is a game that I was actually on the fringe of buying when it was first released. This is a game where you, again, 4 to 20 players, so this is very versatile on who you can play this with and how many people it can cater to. But it's a game where you want to be in the majority when giving certain answers. So, what's the best flavour of crisps? You want to be going with the pack. Do you be true to yourself and hope that everybody agrees with you? Or do you try and guess what everybody else is going to vote for to try and to get into that majority? Another one that's going to be great for casual nights for me, when I have that kind of 5 or 6 players available. I am quite intrigued to see how this one goes. And I like these kind of breezy, turn your brain off and just have some fun kind of games. So that's Herd Mentality. Now, the only game that I bought myself was Abluxon, also known as Linko. So I have actually already reviewed this game, so you can check that one out. It is part of a a 4-game review video with some other card games. This is a really nice kind of a shedding game by Kramer and Kiesling. Very easy to how it works, but it does have some cool little kind of short-term sacrifices for long-term games. You're trying to play these bigger and bigger hands out there, trying to get rid of your cards quickest, or trying not to have too many cards left in your hand. And it's really good. You know, I really like the way this game works. Maybe the first play or two have a few kinks that you need to understand how the mechanisms work. But after that, it is very breezy. You can get a game played in about 10 to 15 minutes. And I think really highly of it. So if you like games like Scout or Mask Men, games like that, this is a really good one to look at. It is quite difficult to get a hold of a copy in the UK. You know, this is a German version here. But I believe in the States it's pretty easy to get hold of under the name Linko. So I really recommend it if you like your clever but still relatively relaxed card games. On to the last couple now. So the next one is Bits. So this is a Reiner Knizia design actually. It's kind of a puzzly game as you're putting these domino-shaped tiles out, which come in, you know, split in half and have 2 different colours on them, or even 2 of the same colours. And you're putting them on these boards here, always going from top to bottom, so they kind of shift down like Tetris. And then you're trying to build shapes and patterns based on these public objectives and trying to get the most points for doing so. That's pretty much the whole gist of the game. You know, you can pretty much imagine how the game is going to play based on that. But no, spoiler alert, I do like it. I think it's quite good fun. A nice little puzzly game. You know, I tend to like puzzle games, and it works quite well for what it does. You know, nothing tremendously inspiring, but one that's pretty inoffensive and you can play anytime and get some enjoyment from it. So that is Bits. And the final game is Circadians First Light. So this was another game that I was going to purchase personally, but something did stop me from doing it. You know, I'm generally not a big fan of sci-fi themed games, and this one has that sci-fi aesthetic to it. And I really do not like this artwork at all. It has this very kind of 2D, always like Archer cartoon style artwork. But this is actually a pretty involved Euro dice drafting game, as you are trying to harvest resources by traversing this map here. Then you are buying kind of these ship upgrades, you're buying these different kind of income upgrades, you're trying to complete these objective cards and public objectives as well. And it's kind of a race to doing all these different things. There's quite a lot of moving parts here. You know, I have played this one once already. I'm not sure if I'll do a full independent review of it or if I'll do a review as part of a series, but you know, spoiler alert, it is a well put together game. It's just one of those games I'm not quite sure on if it's one that's going to really stand out. You know, I kind of consider these games a bit of a conveyor belt game where they're good and they do what they do really well, but you're kind of ready to move on to the next thing as soon as you play them once or twice. But hey, it's certainly got some interesting mechanisms on there, and I would like to play it maybe a couple of times more to see, you know, if my thoughts or feelings sway a different way. But I know it's pretty well reviewed, and I can see why. You know, I do tend to like dice drafters, but because I like so many dice drafters, there is really stiff competition. But that is Circadians First Light. So that's it. That's all the games that I've picked up this month. Something definitely different style of games here. Definitely lighter ones, and some kind of underappreciated games or less known about games. You know, I can't say they're underappreciated if I haven't played them yet, but you get my gist. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.